Hey guys, welcome back to Sip with Joy. We're back for another Monday. Yeah, I feel like the weekend was 2 seconds, but I'm glad to be back. And for those of you just joining, welcome to Sip with Joy. This is a show about a girl, her wine, and her feelings. And I am that girl. I am your host, Joy M. Hutton, serial entrepreneur and lover of food and wine. And y'all know how I like to do it. This is my wine. I'm drinking a Pinot Noir today. It is a Gran Reserva from Chile. And you know where you can find out more about this on Sip with Joy's Instagram page at Sip with Joy to find out more about this wine. So I'm excited today because we do have a guest. The episode is called Calling in the One. Y'all know I've been trying to call in the one, but there is a book with the same title by Katherine Woodward Thomas. And if you have not read it and you're still looking for love, I definitely encourage you to read it. So I'm going to talk more about that with our guest. And shout out to Pastor Rudy, who was one of my guests at the end of last season, who actually recommended this book to me because, yeah, it has definitely changed my life, definitely changed my perspective on a lot of things and really forces you to kind of go within. So if you have not read this book, yeah, we're going to talk more about this because Pastor Rudy told me his daughter read this book. And after she read the book, after she completed the book, she met her husband. So it's got to be something to it. And I've heard other stories like this as well from people who have read this book. So I can't wait for my man to come because it hasn't happened yet. This is not instant. This is not like, instant pot. You got to do some work. So we're going to talk about that today with our guests. We are joined by dating coach and hypnotherapist, Keshia Rice. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Keshia on. Hey, Keshia. Oh, you're still on mute.
I was just saying that I'm happy to be here. Hey.
Hey, thank you. I'm happy to have you. So glad we're here to talk about this topic because I feel like this book is definitely transformational, but not just in that it helps you call in the one, but it's about you being on this journey of self-discovery and doing a little bit of work. But we're going to talk about that. But first, what you sipping on?
So I actually only have water just because I am
Okay.
trying to be talking about calling in the one because, the book is all about being very intentional
Yes.
towards love and all. I'm being very intentional about improving my quality of sleep. So,
Okay.
yeah,
You say
saying
you
no
can't be
to the
drinking at
substances
this time
close
of
to
night.
bedtime. Yeah.
Right. You say I'm not gonna be drinking at this time of night. Nope. Okay. Hey, walking into her. Hey, Elsie. Hey, Dayla. Okay. So well that's good. That's fine. We're not judging here. We're not a judging audience. Sip with joy.
No, I
I'm
mean, I was
doing
going to say your drink looks good. Like
thank
I,
you.
I will make a note for later on, but just not right now.
Yes, I'm drinking for the both of us then. Okay. All right. So tell us a little bit about yourself. And I definitely want to know more about this hypnotherapy as well. But so tell us about what you do.
Yeah, so I'm a dating coach and I help really ambitious, high level women who most of the women that I work with come from fairly conservative backgrounds. I'm
Hmm.
Christian. I studied a million things in college because, I'm black. I'm a black woman.
Right.
Um, but one of them was religion. So,
Hmm.
I work with Christian clients, Muslim clients, Jewish, etc. And it's all about helping them learn how to heal from the unhealthy relationship patterns
Mm.
that keep them single. And then also learning how to balance that, having that background where, your faith is important, you have really strong values.
Yeah.
And then we're in this culture that's kind of like a modern hookup culture and learning how to like reconcile that, you know,
Right.
and being able to call in relationships that are aligned with who you are as a person, are aligned with your values, um, and that are healthy.
Yeah. So tell me more about kind of the work that you do with the hypnotherapy. Like what is the basis for that? Because obviously we need to get focused. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, being a coach, I love it. I really do. But one of the things that I noticed was there's so much mindset work
Mm.
that's involved. And it's easy on the surface to be like, yeah, I need to change my beliefs about this. I need to switch around the way I think about this situation. But what most people don't realize is that most of what we believe about love, money, friendship, you name it, those things are formed between the ages of birth and 7.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
to some extent, we end up in our 30s, 40s, 50s, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And 7-year-old us is still running the show. So that's
Mm.
what made me fascinated by hypnotherapy. The
Yeah.
idea that you could connect with the subconscious mind, connect with those thoughts and thought patterns that were developed when you were 5, 6, 7 that are still affecting you today,
Right.
and learning how to rewire those. So my hypnotherapy is mostly within the confines of my coaching.
Mm-hmm.
I do hypnosis with my coaching clients.
Okay. Wow. That's so fascinating to me. I mean, but it makes sense because we we do have all these things going on in our minds, and these self-limiting beliefs, the trauma and all that stuff that you have to unpack. So I love that. That's very interesting. Okay, so let's talk about, so if you all haven't read it, we're going to just give you a high level overview of this book because we're not going to give you all the things because you got to go get the book. But
Yeah.
we're going to talk about some key takeaways first. So, what are some key takeaways for you from Calling in the One?
So I have to say how I found Colin in the One
Okay.
was I had a quarter life crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was in a job that where I was not happy, wasn't the healthiest of environments.
Yeah.
I was questioning, like, not necessarily my faith. I was going to church every Sunday and everything, but there's the moment at I was in church. There was a video ministry. Video comes, shows of my friend and I, and she looks angelic, and I'm ugly crying, and I just had this thought that, like,
All right.
I can't even God right. You know what I mean?
Right. Oh, wow. I can't even God right. Wow.
Right.
I like that.
And dating wise, I all my friends were getting married, having babies, all that good
Yeah.
stuff. And I was in a situationship that was going nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
So just all these things. And finally, one day, I just broke down crying. And of course, I
Mm.
broke down while I was planning a friend's bridal shower.
Oh,
Tears
right,
all over the invitations,
right. The
everything.
ugly cry all over again.
Yes. And I was like, you know what? I don't know what I want, but this is not it. This is not
Yeah.
the life I want. And that got me on this whole self-development journey. Just any
Mm,
book I could get my hands on, any podcast, video.
right.
And in that process, um, Catherine Woodward Thomas is the same woman who came up with the term conscious uncoupling.
Uncoupling. Yeah. That was it
Right.
Gwyneth Paltrow? They
Yeah. And
okay. Yeah. Gwyneth
Brad Pitt,
Paltrow.
I think they're divorced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They use that
So
term. Yeah. Based
yeah,
off of her. Hmm.
yeah. So she was all in the news, and I kept hearing the name, and then I heard about Calling in the One, and I was like, it's ridiculous. Whatever.
Yeah.
Uh,
Right. You're like, okay. Mm-hmm.
yeah. And then a friend of mine was reading the book,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, okay, that's interesting. The book comes up again later on. At the time, I was working in TV news, and we're doing an interview, and the person we were interviewing brings up this book, and I just could not escape the book.
It was calling you.
Right. So it's funny because I was working at that time in my own inner work about being intentional, about taking the signs,
Mm-hmm.
understanding that, like, when you're feeling pushed towards certain directions, you should go that way.
Right.
And that was one of the key takeaways from Calling in the One, because Catherine, when she's writing all these chapters, everything is about being so intentional. She has,
Yes.
this 7-week process that she wants you to follow. She has, like, all of these activities and meditations that she wants you to engage
Mm-hmm.
in. And it's really about really getting your mind in the in that frame set of, that verse, he that findeth a wife findeth the good thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The mindset of what it is to be a wife, to
Right.
be a partner, because it is different from
Mm-hmm.
being single. And if you still think as a single person, it's really hard to build that connection and build that relationship with someone.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I think for me, and there are a number of them that I know we're going to cover more things too, but I think one of the things, because when you think about a book like that, you're like, oh, I'm going to be able to find a man and find a woman after this. And but it's deeper than that.
It
She
is.
really forces you to go inside, and I know we don't always want to do that, but, recognizing your patterns, speaking up for what you want in a relationship. I mean, it could be something as simple as, you know what, I'm not really feeling the way you kiss me, you touch me, the sex might not be good. You
Right.
gotta you gotta speak up, and a lot of times we may not speak up for fear that, oh, I'm going to lose this person. Well, if that person is offended by what you're saying, then that maybe that person is not the person for you anyway. If he or she's not going to hear you out, in terms of what you
Yeah.
need. And knowing your worth, letting go of the past. We're holding on to past relationships, past hurts. You mentioned childhood earlier. Things from our childhood that manifest themselves into our relationships. And that's personal relationships, professional relationships that we could be carrying. Intention that you mentioned earlier, being intentional about what you want in this process, because it's easy to just be focusing on, I'm going to get somebody at the end of this book. But when you really get into that book, there are some very uncomfortable things that you have to face about yourself. And like recognizing your self beliefs, your self limiting beliefs that you mentioned as well. So do you recommend this book to your clients?
Yeah. And it's funny because I don't just recommend the book to my clients. I
Mm-hmm.
really think that it is a great book for
Yeah,
everyone. Even if you're already in a
absolutely.
relationship, just the inner work exercises
Yeah.
are really great. But also, one of the things that I tell my clients all the time is all relationships are related. So if you
Yeah.
show me a woman who has issues with dating,
Mm-hmm.
then she also has issues with coworkers or clients if she owns her
Mm.
own business. She has issues with parents, other family members, with friends, because setting boundaries with a friend is no different than setting boundaries with your
Yes.
partner.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, I think the book is just great in general for being able to think about, even your other relationships in your life, even with
Yes.
career and with family and all as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And she really, and like you said, it's about that journey of self discovery, whether you're trying to find the one or not, because it really does help you look at past relationships, whether that's between your parents, or whoever was your caregiver, you know, looking at looking at your past, looking at your present, and how you're
Yeah.
responding to things. And so, like, because the idea is what's holding you back from getting the love that you feel like you want to call into your life. So, can you share your thoughts on the role of self-love in preparing for a healthy relationship?
Yeah. We teach others how to treat us.
Yeah.
And we do that in the way in which we love ourselves. So when you love yourself and you do so unashamedly,
Mhm.
you're already setting that precedent for anybody who comes into your life. Like, hey, I love me. I
Mhm.
expect that if you're going to be in my life, you're also going to love me. And you see how well I take care of myself. This is how well I expect to also be taken care of.
That. Yeah. You got to love yourself before anybody else can love you. Before you can receive that love too. So one of the exercises in the book involves writing a letter to your future partner, which I really love that. And so Keisha mentioned there are 7 weeks, right? So each of those 7 weeks, you're doing an exercise every day. So that's 49 days, so it's a commitment. It is definitely a commitment. So, how do you feel like this exercise with writing a letter to your future partner helps in clarifying your desires and goals in a relationship?
In general, just writing things down. And that
Yeah.
was also one of my biggest takeaways from this book was doing the inner work and doing it on paper.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a
because
dedicated journal.
yeah, yeah,
Just to the book.
just being able to go back and look at that and see how you've grown and also see what your standards are. Some so often things come out in writing that if you were just talking it out or just thinking in your head, they don't come out. You just
Hmm.
gain so many insights from writing it out. But also just this idea, talking about me being a hypnotherapist, putting yourself in the mind frame of talking to a partner, of
Right.
having that communication, being able to voice what it is that you want and what you need, and also just surrounding yourself. I like the time frame of the 7 weeks in the book because what you focus on, you get more of. I think about the fact that the car that I currently drive is a Toyota Corolla.
Hmm.
When I decided that I was going to buy it, I was suddenly surrounded by Corollas on the highway.
Right.
And, I live in the South. I live
Yeah.
in Atlanta. Um, we love our gas guzzlers here. So it's not like,
Right.
you would typically just see a whole bunch of Corollas.
Yeah.
But because that was on my mind, that is what I saw everywhere.
Mm.
So when you have, this letter, when you have these exercises in the book, just being in the mind frame of, I have a partner and this is
Right.
me talking to him every day, it just does so much to help you really open your eyes more to the possibilities.
Yeah. Yeah. So another one of my favorite exercises is it was called cleaning the clutter or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's basically about letting go of physical and emotional baggage and also creating space. And so whether that's cleaning your closet, making space in your closet, I had only seen this one time in dating where a guy actually did this and he created a space in his closet. And I was like, why do you have this big gap in your closet? Like, you buying some new clothes? Like, and he's like, no, that's like for my future wife. He was calling in the one through this space in his closet. He's like, she'll come in, I was like, so she only get that little corner? You gonna need more than that. He was like, no. He was like, no, it's symbolic, but I'm
Yeah.
creating space for that person. So it's creating space and then letting go of old things like, she said pictures and maybe old gifts that we're holding on to, like, ooh, I really love that, t-shirt or whatever.
Yeah.
Get rid of it. But just releasing that energy. I think it goes beyond, like you said before, it's not just if you're dating or trying to find the one, it's also just letting go of baggage, period. Letting go of clutter, period. Just I can't think in clutter anyway,
Yeah.
but the cleaning of the closet and all of that, like purging things. And also with the making space for another person in your home and looking at spaces in your home to say, okay, are they inviting of someone else? Like, can two people fit on this couch? Do you
Yeah.
have two pillows on your bed? So things like that. So why do you feel like this is so important, like doing an exercise like that?
Yeah, a couple of things. One, back to that whole mindset thing, just being in the mindset of having a partner. I remember the first time that I read Calling in the one of the things I did was I just went to Goodwill and got like a little bedside table for the other side of my bed. I
Yeah.
already had a nightstand on my side.
Hmm. Right. You
I
like,
was
I
like,
got one.
oh, like yeah, here's a cute little table. I could put it on
Hmm.
the other side, for my future husband and everything. And just being in that mindset of like, okay, this is a home for two now.
Yes.
Um, and just living in that, being
Yeah.
in that. But also the things that we have are so emotional. And it's not until you're trying to purge your house or apartment or closet that you realize that you're holding on to all of these things and the reasons behind them. I know for me, when I was doing that exercise of decluttering and everything, um, my weight has always fluctuated up and down, up and
Hmm.
down.
Hmm.
And I was holding on to clothes that there was no way I was ever going to wear them again
Right.
because they were, I had lost enough weight for them to be like cartoonishly large or
Yeah.
even if I had things that were a little bit smaller, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
even if I did lose weight to fit into that again, it was something I owned in high school. I definitely was not
Yeah.
going to wear it again, right?
Right. You're like, okay, time to let it go.
Right. And then, but talking about self love and how important it is,
Yeah.
when I got serious about that decluttering and asking myself, why am I holding on to these clothes? It brought up a whole lot of things about body image,
Mm-hmm.
about, looking back to previous times and kind of missing those times, and
Mm-hmm.
realizing that I was not in a space, I wasn't as prepared to move forward and really find a new relationship as I thought I was, because I was holding
Mm.
on to things from previous seasons in my life.
Right.
And, you know, you don't let go of those seasons overnight, but the start was getting rid of certain items.
Yeah. I think, yeah, and I think that's key. Like, you also have to be ready.
Yeah.
We think we're ready,
Yeah.
but we may not be ready, so you have to have an honest conversation with yourself about where you are too. And then also, I think with you doing the exercise yourself, or whoever's doing the exercise themselves, looking at other people and seeing, have they made space for you. Like,
Yeah.
I will go to a guy's house and I'm like, this does not look like you're inviting anyone in here. This is a bachelor pad, This is not a home. Does anybody even live here? Are there pots? Do you have real glasses? Like, it's just, are they creating space for you as well? Because it's like, no, I see you selfish. See, you got that one pillow.
I went over a guy's house once, and in his living room, he had no couch. He had a mattress
Oh no.
that a family member had given to him. And he was like, well, this is fine. This is comfortable or whatever. And it's like, how are you talking about you want to get married and have kids and you're not taking care of yourself well? Like,
You don't have a couch. You don't even have a couch, sir. And a mat, girl, stop. Stop. Just stop, Keshia. No, I would have been like, all right, well, thanks. Have a good night. Get a couch. Yeah, that's crazy. See, that's not inviting me in. That is not inviting me in at all. Um, so Catherine mentions in the book that there will be people that come into your life as distractions, and while you're going through this process, and you may even think that you've met the one, but you have to continue to stay focused in this process on what it is you say that you want. So what are some ways you tell your clients to stay focused on this process? Hey, Lizzle.
so one of the things for me is when she talks about people coming in, back to that whole idea of all relationships are related, it is not just men that you're dating.
Right.
You will also have old friends come
Mm-hmm.
back into your life. And we have this tendency when that happens to be like, oh, this is exciting. I haven't seen you in a while. I want to catch up. And catching up is all well and good. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the people who are coming into your life are pulling you back into previous versions of yourself
Yes. Oof.
that you should not allow yourself to go back to that. But then, even with men, I always tell my clients that before you meet Mr. Right, typically what happens is a few Mr. Right nows come through. And these are men and these are men who they're not terrible men, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like they're perfectly okay. They're fine, but they're not completely aligned with what it is that you want in life. There's going to
Yes.
be something that's off.
Yep.
Like this guy is most of the way there, but there's just this thing or this one or two things that aren't what you want or what you need in a
Mm-hmm.
relationship. And there's this temptation to settle for close enough,
Oof.
good enough.
Girl. Listen.
And
You better
and
speak, Keisha.
one of the things that I tell my clients is that, when we work together, the first thing we do is make a love list of what it
Mm-hmm.
is that you want in a relationship. And we also refine that love list with what are the non negotiables, what are the deal breakers, you have this list of things that you want, but which of these things are priorities, the things that you absolutely can't live without, and which ones are the
Mm-hmm.
nice to haves. And I'm big on, writing that down.
Right.
So I always tell my clients, you're going on dates, you're meeting these men, and when you're doing that, come back home and measure this guy up against your list
Yeah.
and remind yourself the things that you said were priority. I can't be with a man unless he absolutely has this. Remind yourself of why these things are the priority, because we all do it. You
Right.
get in, you start seeing someone and the person is nice, they're really good looking, they're charming, you get caught up in that,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're like, deal breaker for me, smoking. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, but this person smokes. And it's like, oh, is that really that bad?
Yeah.
And then you're like, you know, I had to go through this process before I got married. So so, you know, you see that and you're like, is that really that bad? And it's like talking to myself, girl, you got asthma. Yeah, that's bad. Like you can't
Yeah, you gonna die, right? Like, make it make sense, okay? Yeah. That's funny. Yeah, you have to weigh the reality of the situation. So, Lydia said, "How many before Mr. Right waltzes in? Because as of today, I met 400." And then LC said, "But do you think you will find someone who checks all the boxes? They may check 9 out of 10."
yeah, so I am a big fan of what is called the 80-20 rule.
Yes, we've heard that here
Write a
on the
list of
podcast.
everything that you could possibly want in a relationship. Go
Hmm.
crazy.
Yeah.
Just, don't hold yourself back.
Hmm.
The best you will find is 80%.
Yeah.
That's the best that you will find. That other 20%, you have family members, you have friends. I, for example, I'll say with my husband, I love to try new foods. My husband is a very picky eater. So that is in the 20% that he does not have.
Right.
I have friends that can go out to eat with us, it's fine. Um, but I say that because in that process, that's why just the love list itself is not enough.
Yeah.
You do have to prioritize some things, because you can say, I'm good with 80%, but again, there are going to be some things that are more important to you than others.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah, we had someone come on and talk about the 80-20 rule too. And then Lydia said in the chat, she said, "Hell no, you ain't gonna get everything you want." And then 80-20, she said that's not what Joy wants to hear. You know what? First of all, I can compromise on some things, okay? I have learned I'm not going to get everything. I have specific requirements. There's some things that are deal breakers for me. Listen,
As you should.
yeah, and I listen. I told someone the other night. I said, and I've said this before. I deserve what I ask God for. Now, if God tells me that it's not for me, then I can't argue with God, right? But
Yeah.
you know, me and him gonna take that up with each other, though.
Now, can I tell you a story about that?
Yes.
Okay, so a few years ago, I had a friend who we weren't we spent time together, but you know how you have people in your life who, like, they just aren't the most open, so they kind of keep you at arm's length.
Mm-hmm.
So even though we spent a fair amount of time together, I couldn't say that I knew her incredibly well until this moment. And she always kept complaining about wanting to be in a relationship, never finding the right person. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make this a project. So I started talking to every guy I knew about her,
Mm.
like coworkers, male friends, guys from church, whatever. And I found like this one guy who, back to 80-20, felt like he was like the 80%.
Yeah.
I was like, this guy is good. This guy is solid. And I introduced the two of them. They went out one or two times, and she was like, no, absolutely not. Now, keep in mind, I'm not joking when I said she had like a 10-page list.
Wow.
And this guy was like most of that list.
Wow. That's impressive.
Um, just, just a couple of things off. So I was like, girl, you're not going to find better than this. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I promise you, you will not. And she was like, no, I don't think it's gonna work. And
Mm.
the things were things like she didn't like that he sometimes worked weekends. Like it was things like that that were
Okay. Mm-hmm.
that were her no's.
Yeah.
Okay, so fast forward like 2 years later, she comes back to me. She's like, "You remember that guy?" And I'm like, "Yeah, the one who's married now."
Oh.
Like,
Oh. Too late, boo. Like, yeah, you can't come. It's too late. Too late. Now she's like, dang. Because I'm sure she probably was out there dating and, like, yeah, like you said, it's not going to get any better than this. And, but like you said as well, like, because I've met a lot of good guys, but we just weren't aligned. And it wasn't even that I was being picky, it's just we weren't aligned. Like, if you're not
yeah,
ready to be in a committed relationship, we're not aligned, you know? So, and yeah, that's a whole other topic about people and their commitment issues. But, you know, yeah, you have to, you're not going to get the perfect person. You'll get the perfect person for you, but that also requires a lot of patience. And, you know, Catherine said, she, what was it she said about a needle in a haystack? She said, it's not about finding a needle in a haystack. It's about being so magnetic that the needle finds its way to you. And I was like, oh my God, I love that. Cause you
yeah.
try to go looking for that needle in the haystack, listen, kill yourself now. Like it's just not it's not happening. You know, that you have to call in the energy that you want in your life. You have to do the work and all of that. So, but that does require a great deal of work and a great deal of patience.
It does. And one of the mistakes that I see a lot of women make, and it kind of dovetails with this whole idea of can you get everything that you want?
Right.
Research has shown that happy relationships are with people who have shared values,
Mm,
not shared
right.
interest
Mm-hmm.
necessarily. I think about like that song Breakfast at Tiffany's, and it's
Yes.
a whole relationship based on the fact they like the same movie. Uh,
Yes.
and just this idea that, I will see women like they're with someone who is most definitely aligned value wise.
Mm,
Like they have the same beliefs about education, about having kids, about giving back to the community, things like that. But because he doesn't like the same music or the same books, like that's a deal breaker to them. And having some interest in common is good, but also, there's a lot of value to having separate interests too. My husband and I spend time apart with our different interests,
mm-hmm.
and it's nice. It's nice to at the end of the day come back and be like, "Hey, this is what I did today. What did you do?"
Right.
And to have those conversations. So back to prioritizing and understanding what's really important. If something's an absolute deal breaker for you, I don't want you to compromise on that.
Yeah.
Like hold
Exactly.
that standard. But there are other things that, if you really think about it, in 10 years, it's not going to matter that he refused to watch Gilmore Girls with you, right? Like,
Right. Right. You still mad about it. You like, "Oh, no, I'm still mad about it." Yeah. No, I agree. So, how do you think that the concepts in calling in the one resonate with black women in particular in terms of self-love, self-worth? Or do you think it does?
it definitely does. Just in general, we tend to be a more collective society.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true really for people of the global majority. So people with African ancestry, people with Latin American ancestry, Asian ancestry, as opposed to Western countries that are more individualistic. We tend to be very collective, community based, do everything for the group, right?
Mm-hmm.
And calling in the one kind of encourages you to be more selfish. And I think that's a great thing
Yeah, it does.
because people will see it as selfishness, but the best way that you can love other people is to love from the overflow. You love yourself first, you fill your own cup, and then flowing out of that, it becomes easier to love others and to do it without having bitterness, without having resentment, without having these feelings of I put so much effort into you and I'm not getting that back.
Right.
Because one, you don't necessarily need it back. Like you're fooling yourself. You're
Mm-hmm.
not you're not giving so much, to the point that you're hungry and then like mad that the person's not giving you food too. Um, but also because you have set up that, I love myself, point blank period, and I don't compromise on, the fact that I love myself. You teach other people to love you as well
Right.
and not just see you as utility,
Mm-hmm.
something that they can
Absolutely.
benefit from.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So there's a question here: as women of color, what are your thoughts on dating outside of your race?
My husband is Hispanic, so
Okay.
so obviously I have no problems with it.
Yes.
But in general, um, at the end of the day, dating is a numbers game,
Yeah.
and you should do what you can to expand your pool.
Mm-hmm.
So,
She said that's all I got to say about that. Open your mind. Open your mind and your heart. Okay. So there are some questions. So if you don't get this now, do the replay and then y'all come back to these questions and write them down. But there are some questions that Katherine asks you or tells you to ask yourself when you are going through this process. And so the first question is, what do you need to let go of in order for this vision, which is calling in the one, to come to you? Okay, that's number one. Two, how would you need to grow yourself and develop yourself in order to be ready when this relationship comes to you? And then three, what's your next step? So I want you to talk about, Keshia, the next step, because a lot of times we go into this mode where we're just like, my mission is this, but that's not what she's talking about. So can you kind of expound on that next step that she talks about?
yeah, so I want to bring up the idea of masculine and feminine energy.
Mm-hmm.
Because we hear so much about it online. But what I think you need to understand is that masculine energy is structure, feminine energy is flow.
Mm-hmm.
And in our lives, it is all about us balancing that within ourselves and then within our relationships too, because relationships thrive on polarity. In every relationship, every healthy relationship, one person is more masculine, the other person is more feminine,
Yeah.
but within ourselves as well. So, talking about the next steps and that balance, there are definitely masculine energy things that you can do. That is making the love list, that is figuring out what are your boundaries. How do I need to communicate these in a relationship? Which things do I need to bring up very early on, or which things can wait a little bit.
Right.
um, it is setting up the structures for you to meet people. So that is, um, again, I work with a lot of very religious women, and I will hear, well, there's no one single in my church, in my synagogue, at my mosque. Have you considered going to the one down the street? Have you considered going to conferences? Have
Mm-hmm.
you,
Yeah. Going
like take
outside
those,
of your comfort zone, your
yeah,
bubble. Yeah.
take those opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Also, online dating. I work with some women who, and I'm saying this because it is definitely much more of an investment, but if you are more affluent, matchmaking services, those
Mm-hmm.
those still exist and those work as well. But figuring out those structures, like, okay, I like to run. Am I going to join a running club on weekends so that I can get
Right.
out there and meet people? Um, I own a business. Am I going to join some entrepreneurial groups? Like, what are the things that I'm going to do to put myself out there?
Yeah.
And then you balance that with the feminine flow, which is going on dates and just having the expectation, this is a chance for me to learn something today.
Yes.
Maybe I'll learn something about myself. Maybe I'll learn something about, it is true, there are men who exist that don't have furniture in their homes. Um,
Listen, no.
maybe, maybe I'll learn about dating in general. Maybe, maybe I'll go on this date and this guy wanted to have lunch and then we walked around and then we did all this and it turned into a 4-hour date and now I'm exhausted. And
Yeah.
the lesson I learned today was I'm going to cap my dates at 2 hours. But
Mm,
keep the expectations to things like that where you can still just be in the moment.
right. Instead of
And
planning
then
your wedding while you sitting there eating
right.
your salmon. Like, girl, no, calm down.
Right. And then after the date, back to that masculine structure, go home and write down, okay, I was in the moment. I listened to everything that he said. Were there some red flags in that conversation? Were there
Hmm.
some yellow flags? What were the things he did that I really liked?
Yeah.
Okay, seeing that I evaluated this, do I want a second date now after I've evaluated it?
Hmm.
But the best way that you can evaluate that, have that masculine structure, is if on the date you were in your feminine flow, you stayed
Right.
present and just listened.
Hmm. I love that. Woo. Listen, y'all, this has been a great topic. There are a lot of learnings here, so I hope you're listening. But I want you guys to realize, like, even with this book, nothing, this is, like I said, this is not instant. Like some people may have instant results, but it could also be that they've been doing the work prior to even reading the book, and the book was just a catalyst. Cause you're not just gonna go outside and meet them. It might happen, I don't know, but it ain't gonna happen. It ain't gonna happen on the next day after I finished this chapter. So where you at? You cannot expect that. You have to continue to remain open and be, stick to what it is that you want. And I think you said something earlier, Kesha, in terms of how someone may appear to have the things that you want, and we may settle just because you're like, oh, but he has almost, this or that, and I don't know if I can do better. But if you believe that you can do better, then wait it out. I'm not settling. Been there, done that, not doing again. I'm just not. And so you just got to do the work. And this book is really about doing the work and looking at what's holding you back from receiving that love, not even finding it, but receiving it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I was going to say, being able to receive it is so important because
Yes,
I've
exactly.
seen women get in relationships where they're with someone who is truly into them, truly cares about them,
Hmm.
but because of their past and because they're so suspicious, they allow themselves to sabotage a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. And we have to be committed to being the person that we need to be to call in that love, because we can have a whole list, like even your friend with the 10 pages, like you asking for all these things, but are you the person you need to be to even receive this person? Now 2 years later she asking where you at, because it's like, oh, now you're ready. You weren't ready then, and you're asking for all these things, and now this man is gone. Because they'll find. Listen, they will find someone. Okay, we we ain't got all these options, so when we have a good thing. Hold on to it.
No, we definitely have options,
Yeah,
but um, it is easy to let your past, to allow it to shoot yourself in the foot.
yeah,
It is.
absolutely, absolutely. We got options, but it just depends on what you're looking for, because the options might be about this small. I saw this person, this woman on Instagram. She was like, okay, if they're this, if they're not in prison, if they're not this, and then she was like, okay, so you got about this many peanuts, that you got left in the dating pool. But it again, and it just depends on what you're looking for. So, like you said, expanding what you want, expanding your options.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm equal opportunity, but I
Well, I'll say okay.
prefer a black man, but if God says, listen, you know,
Well, I'll say, not only is my husband a different race, he's also 5 years younger than I am.
okay.
You know, and this is something I talk with my clients about too, about
Yeah.
expanding your age range. Um, I'm not saying you have to go crazy with it, but at the same time, I know I've had clients say, there's no way I would date anyone who's younger, period. I don't care if it's a year younger.
Right.
Which is funny because I just got invited to the wedding of a client of mine who said that, and her husband's 2 years younger. But anyways,
That's hilarious.
but yeah, expanding your pool is
Yeah,
important.
exactly. Yeah, and again, it goes back to alignment because sometimes we're like, the maturity level of someone that may be 5 years younger, but you might meet somebody that's mature. You know,
Yeah.
age is not age is a number. You know, you can meet somebody that's mature that is actually younger than you. I do believe that, but that is a you Kesha, you know, it's not a lot of it's not a lot of options in younger dating. Like, come on now,
But look, I know men who are in their 50s and 60s and
they're
still aren't
not.
mature enough to get
Oh
married.
yeah, they're
So
not.
if that's the case, the reverse is true as well.
Oh
There are men in their
yeah,
20s who are wise
absolutely.
beyond their years, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Okay, so you're working on something. You have tell us about what you're working on.
Yeah, so most of what I do is one-on-one coaching,
Mhm.
but I also do want to I'm working on finding ways to be more accessible. And also, I know coaching is a commitment,
Right.
and sometimes you need to ease into that a little bit. So I have two journals out now.
Mhm.
One is called Ditch the Dead Weight, and it's all about, after a breakup, healing from that relationship. So there's journal prompts to go through to help you move forward from that breakup. And then the other journal is all about self sabotage
Mm.
and the ways in which you might be sabotaging yourself. So
Those are
that
good.
one in particular is good for more than just relationships
I think those
because
need to come with a
fear
playlist
and all
too. I
that.
think we need a playlist to go along with that too.
Yeah. So yeah, I have those two journals, and I know Joy, I
Awesome.
gave you the link to those.
Yes, I
So
put the link in the
um
chat, and then you guys can also find Kesha on Instagram at Keshia Rice, KESHIARICE.
yeah. And I'm also on TikTok as well. If you prefer TikTok, same
Okay,
handle. So
good. Kudos to you for doing TikTok. I am still trying to get on the TikTok bus, but the struggle is real. I'm like, I can only manage one platform at a time. So, but that's good. So you guys can find Kesha on TikTok, on Instagram, and you can find those journals on the website that I dropped for you. So make sure you follow Kesha. Get that coaching session if you need it. All right. And yeah, I'm glad we were able to have this conversation about this book because this book really has changed my perspective on a lot of things, and I'm grateful that Pastor Rudy recommended it to me. And stay tuned, guys, for when I announce that love in my life. I probably won't announce it, but
I
but
mean,
just
at
stay
the
tuned.
wedding, post the picture.
They just gonna see the hands, on Instagram. Just It's just the hands there, and they gonna be like, "Wait, who is that?" So, but yes, thank you so much for being here, Kesha. This was a great conversation. I hope you guys were taking notes, and if you didn't, catch the replay. So I'll see you guys next week, and thanks for tuning in. Bye,
Bye.
guys.